Okay, so we're going to get straight into 3 ICM adjusted sims. All right, so really quickly, I'm just going to explain what this looks like. So we've got ourselves with the 7 big blind stack on the big blind. We've got a raise first in player raising on a 15 big blind stack. We have another player at a final table with just 4 big blinds, quite constraining to our ability to play hands. And then we have some other stacks at the table that are relevant, so 10, 20, and 34 big blinds respectively, which will have impacts on the in-position player for sure. Okay, so just a reasonable payout structure, and with that we can start looking at the raise first in range. So the in-position player for this first example is raising 15.7%. This is just a sample frequency. There's nothing solved for with respect to this 15.69%. It's just a frequency that you could be up against. So assuming that we're up against the 15.7% raise first in strategy, what should we do with a 7 big blind stack on the big blind with a 4 big blind stack at the table and those other stacks that we highlighted? Okay, so we can see here, this is the 15.7% raise first in. It's raising to a min raise. And this is the response. So you can see here that we're using a 79% fold, nearly a 79% fold. And that's really substantial. I mean, like, this is far away from what a chippy V strategy might look like, okay? You can see that we're just folding hands as strong as ace-9 offsuit or queen-jack offsuit before the flop. You can see that we're folding lots of suited hands before the flop, like king-6 suited, king-5 suited, queen-8 suited. This is pretty significant because these hands would be very easy calls otherwise. And so that 4 big blind stack is really handcuffing the pre-flop strategy of the big blind, okay? And the big blind is still using a pretty aggressive 3-bet strategy. This hasn't gotten that tight, so the big blind is still 3-betting hands like pocket 8s. It's mixing hands like pocket 7s. This exact 3-bet strategy is contingent on a 30% fold for the in-position player. So in position should still be folding pretty substantially versus the 3-bet. A lot of your human opponents might not. They might just raise call their entire opening range, given that you have just 7 big blinds. That is something to think about. It will constrain the 3-bet strategy if your opponents do not fold any hands before the flop. But it is also of note that you should be folding hands versus 7 big blind re-steals in this distribution, because I think a lot of people would miss that. Okay, so with that, we can get into our second sim, and our second sim is taking place versus a 20% raise first in. So it is the exact same. It is the exact same inputs as the previous one, with the exception being a different raise first in frequency. And so this raise first in frequency here is 20%. Okay, and so you can see things are just a little bit wider. Okay, some expansion there. And what should the big blind do versus this 20% raise first in strategy? And so the big blind is now just 70% folding, so down from 80%. So the big blind is folding less often versus a weaker raise first in strategy. That makes sense. Okay, so the opener has weaker hands. We defend more. Okay, fine, not too complicated. We are 3-betting more hands, also not rocket science. So you can see now we're able to defend hands like ace-8 and ace-7 offsuit, as well as ace-5. You can see we're 3-betting some hands, some expanded hands like 6s and 5s and ace-8 suited. And so still 3-betting like a relatively clean value range. Nothing crazy wide about this. Flatting aces, okay? This is a hand that obviously at 7 big blinds doesn't give up too much money going into the flop. It crushes most flops. And so like it's a welcome addition to the flatting strategy. But note still the 70% fold, almost 71% fold against a 20% raise first in, and versus a 3-bet shove, the big blind is still folding right around 30%. Okay, so again, this just a reminder that is the strategy is contingent on this fold, because if we node locked and changed this, we would get a different output. Okay. So with that, we can look at our final sim for this, and this is again, all the same inputs, so we don't have to go over those again, but we've got a 30% raise first in, a 25% raise first in strategy. And so versus a 25% raise first in strategy, so the pre-flop range continuing to get weaker that the big blind is up against, how does the big blind respond? And so the big blind is now folding just 62% of hands, okay? But that's still quite substantial. I mean, keep in mind, it's a 25% raise first in. And like normally any ace would be a VPIP. We'd normally be calling with a lot of these offsuit hands here, and certainly most of these, if not all of these, suited hands. And so this is still a substantial fold. Okay, you can still see that aces is flatting. You can see pairs down to 5s 3-betting, ace 9 offsuit 3-betting, some suited aces, etc. So again, I think that hopefully this was an insightful video helping you to kind of nail down just how constraining that 4 big blind stack will be, in addition to the other stacks at this final table for this distribution. So thanks very much. See you guys later. Bye-bye.